Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. I'm your host, Chris Noble. And today we're going to have a really fascinating discussion with an amazing guest to talk about our galactic history from a really interesting perspective. And everyone we have on the show here always brings a very, very unique perspective to the table. And today I wanted to try to bring in a perspective that can speak to the galactic sides of our history, but also someone who has a very insider's perspective on the inner workings of politics and the nuances, the ever evolving nuances of the power structures on this planet. So, with that being said, I'm really excited to bring into the show today Laura Eisenhower. Laura, welcome to Ancient Mysteries on Earth. How are you doing today?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I was really lucky. I got to see Laura present at Portal To Ascension's Galactic Cruise back in December 2024. Man, time is weird these days. It's right. And she did a fantastic job. She had several presentations, and I think to set up our audience for today's discussion, if we could, Laura, I know you have, and she has an amazing backstory. We'll give all of Laura's information, of course, in the description below, all of the ways you can follow up with her after this show. But for the audience right now, can we give you just a little brief description of how you've gotten to where you are today and this knowledge pool that you have access to? Just a little brief kind of background on who you are and how you've accumulated the knowledge that we'll be sharing today.
Hmm. Well, I just came in really aware of my mission, just really at a young age. It just like struck me. Um, so downloads and just feeling into the spirit of Eisenhower and just like, how did I end up in this family? These were just major catalysts for me. Um, yeah, so I just have been, I don't know, on this journey to uncover the truth. And I always felt very sensitive to programmings and inversions and just everything matrix that we see in the world. I was just like, okay, there's a deeper history to why and how it all became the world that we're in and us as humans. Like, so going through the school system, and science class and history class, I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. There's so much more. So when the curiosity, guides you, you end up diving deep into these kind of topics. So I just started to explore galactic history and what our junk DNA truly is, and the exopolitical, because of my great grandfather, what really happened during his administration, and just peeling back all the layers, because there's so many layers that are covering up what the truth actually is in ourselves, in the world. And it's that micro macro exploration of digging deep inside my own soul and digging deep uh, with just what was being presented to me when it didn't feel right. If I wasn't like able to pay attention to it, I wouldn't take the labels or the stigmas or the, oh well, I let myself guide the journey to explore, what my intuition was wanting to reveal, which led me to the information that I speak about. I was targeted to go off planet to go to Mars, though. So, uh, and that has to do with a lot of, oh gosh, really in depth stuff and how it relates to Eisenhower's administration, and timelines. That's kind of the heart of my work. That agreement that I made to come in, and he knew about it. He knew a descendant was going to come in with this kind of agreement to help expose the truth and carry on what he wasn't able to do. And when they intercepted that information, it led to this, targeting to go off planet. So yeah, it's just a lot to express, but I put it mostly in a book that people can explore. And ultimately it's just about awakening something that lives inside all of us, and just having a really, really strong commitment to uncovering just the depth of our ancient and galactic history to understand why the world is the way it is and like who we truly are, so that we can reclaim uh, a destiny that has to do with the organic ascension timeline and not all these attempts to pull us into an artificial trajectory that's engineered, all these engineered events that have occurred, it's like the study of how that's impacted our DNA, how that's impacted um, the zodiac, even, you know, it just, this is where you can like really look and begin to dismantle, the dark weaponry from our system so that ourselves and the planetary grid network that was messed with can de-weaponize the overlay reversal grid technology to shift the trajectory to ascension and advancing ourselves as sovereign human beings that are divine. So, yeah, there's been a lot of manipulation to the planetary grid network and also to our own DNA. And the more we understand that, and consciously remove ourselves from, these systems, belief systems, and programs, the more we'll see the world reflect back to us a much, much better trajectory than the one that we get caught up in through news, through media, through, predictions, and just and there's a lot of noise out there. So try and like hold the clarity of like what's possible because of who we truly are and what our genetic code holds and how it's been tampered with and what we need to do to heal it.
Before we get into a bit more of this galactic history, I mean, I have to ask, Laura, and I know for my audience here, they may not know this part about your story, which is you getting, attempted to be recruited to go live on Mars. I mean, I can't gloss over that one. I would love to just a little bit more on what happened there and like what was that all about? I know there's a big story here, but like, Cole's notes or bullet point version of that.
Yeah, well, there's forces in this world, as we know, that want to control the destiny of the human race. And what's interesting about this Mars recruitment, and that I notice, is that there are a lot of well-intentioned people that are duped into thinking that something has to happen. Um, and my take is, or my response was, well, really, is it like really fixed like that? Because the whole idea of going to Mars, or at least the way it was presented to me, was because the Earth was in trouble, and in the event of cataclysmic events, or some kind of Armageddon, or we need to have survival colonies, and that makes sense to protect the human genome and go off planet, but it also loses the importance of understanding what planetary ascension is all about and what we need to do here on Earth. So there are aspects of it that recognize like the New World Order, but if that's going to happen on Earth, or a depopulation agenda, well, we'll go off and survive on these other, colonies, or some kind of catastrophic event or solar event that would compromise, the human race. Because there's so much compartmentalism, there's not just like one reason, behind these sort of things. And I was seeing the multi layers of all of it. But my whole take was, if there's weather weapons, if there's geoengineering, if there's dark technologies that can engineer artificial timelines, don't we need to call that out and understand that, instead of just respond to a world that is just creating futures for people that are not organic? So that's what I'm here for. That's what we're all here for, I think. Maybe not everybody, of course, but there's something about this planet that is so unique. And I just, yeah, was able to just really dig deep into those, deeper layers of my agreements, my soul history, and understanding what this planetary ascension is all about, and began to realize that they wanted to hijack planetary ascension through sort of like, let's run away, because this is going to happen. So with the levels of compartmentalism, and some are hearing this is necessary, they felt like heroes because we have a backup plan, because there's nothing that we can do. But on the deeper levels, it's to create that reaction so that we don't do the work that we need to do in order to dismantle the deep state and stand up against New World Order and refuse to just be a controlled and enslaved society. So why run off to another planet when we can expose all the dark technology and all the games being played and understand the roots of it and dig deep into our galactic history, our ancient history, and just the technologies that they're using, quantum access technologies like Looking Glass and other ways to just like manipulate timelines and stay sort of like in charge and control, yeah, if we dig into all of that, maybe we could just like collapse all of it and reconnect with, the true core essence and soul of this earth, and how it connects with the mother arc of the cosmic trinity, and that whole story of Sophia, and the Christ Sophia, and how that's our true genetic, or our true DNA blueprint, the 12 tree grid, the 12 strand DNA, how that corresponds to the original planetary grid network that got overtaken by reversal grid technology that, um, messed up our ability to be in co-creation with the planet. So this is the repair work, this is the healing work that needs to be done. And so going off to Mars, whether it was like well-intentioned for some of them because that we had no other choice, or yeah, just allow this to continue where we have to run away because of superstorms that are generated through, the use of harvesting and siphoning technologies, which also harvest and siphon the humans that believe in the narratives that are being steered in the psyops and the false flags. It's like, this has got to stop. So a lot of it was very catalyzing for me because I'm like, that doesn't feel right. Dig deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper. And like you were saying, like in the school, junk DNA, that doesn't feel right. Dig deeper, dig deeper. This bit of history that I'm learning about, I don't think that's how it really happened. So let's go down some rabbit holes. And then here, we are talking to so many people that have, been in secret space programs, whistleblowers, people that have had contact experiences and been abducted. And so a big piece for me, though, is crushing the false narratives about my great grandfather, too. Um, because all of these cover stories are still trying to hook us in so they can control the narrative and control our future. And I stand for human sovereignty and that we all have come here with very unique and beautiful gifts and soul purposes that need space and room to thrive and grow. And we need to heal these pillars of society that have been infiltrated by, these, dark forces so that future generations can, rise up to the fullness of why they're here instead of what they've been conditioned or socially engineered to become.
We've done an episode on the channel here on the archaeology of Mars. So there's a lot of weird, interesting stuff going on in Mars. But let's be honest. I mean, Gaia, the planet Earth here, Mother Earth, she's absolutely stunning. She's gorgeous. And why would we want to go somewhere else? In a way, like I want to explore the universe, but we got a beautiful planet here that we need to focus on, and we got to take care of it and be stewards of this planet, essentially, which is what I think we're meant to be. And I loved what you said as well with regards to, and this is something really interesting. I want to get into this before we get into this galactic history because they're linked, which is our DNA. And you've mentioned a couple of times junk DNA, and for many years I've been fascinated with the topic of junk DNA because first of all, what a weird name, is this just this function that literally is our sort of our computer blueprint of how to create our entire being is just 98% of it's junk. Like that's ridiculous. That doesn't even sound like that. This doesn't make sense to me. Never did. And of course you look into it and it's essentially just offline DNA. And I know you're very, like, you have a phenomenal perspective on this. So with what you've learned up to now, what is the significance of our DNA and what the heck is junk DNA for people that aren't aware of this?
Well, the junk part is where we've been cut off from our galactic memories, from our galactic heritage, from the much, much bigger picture. So it's junk as in like, don't look at it. Don't look at it. Stay in this
Okay.
3D, stay in this 3D, three strands, two strands, not all 12 strands, because all those other strands, junk, that's where it holds the integration of polarity, the alchemical marriage, the sacred union, the hierogamic union, all the way up to the Christos light and the cosmic trinity. That
Okay.
is the print of, like, of our full expression. So if we're not exploring all of that, we're just bumping up against, these frequency fences and these seals, and that's the enslaved part. And all that junk is actually being kind of used and harvested and it's part of the simulation of the Saturn moon matrix, dark technologies of this artificial simulation that has taken over, where we're just functioning as, dumbed down humans, but the reality that we're interacting with, you know, is like recoding or like just reconfiguring, like what we see and what we experience. When we begin to switch it on and we begin to, remove those fences, which we're doing actively, and we explore other states of consciousness and higher states of consciousness, right? But to really integrate it into the physical vessel to achieve, um and break the aging program and all the things that cause us to, die young and, like in our 70s, 80s, 90s, when we could live thousands of years, um is to begin to recognize, the fullness of ourself, and that the planet and the stargates connect to star systems and off planet and ET higher dimensional DNA and the guardians and the cosmic trinity and source energy. But it allows us to come and go as we please. It gives us our abilities back. We aren't confined. We're not enslaved. We're not caught in this reincarnation cycle. So what we learn in school is the program, is the indoctrination. This is junk, we're just meant to like learn, regurgitate, and pick and choose which career, you might have an affinity to. So the healers, okay, you can become a doctor. The people that want justice, okay, go into law, those that, are musicians, all right, well, go seek the industry and like look at what that can do to you, right? So all these pillars of society, all these careers and options that we're given are just, part of this kind of takeover. That's what we saw in 2019. When the pandemic happened, people were beginning to realize like these pillars of society are asking us to do things that we really don't feel is like good for us, good for our health, good for our children. Or you felt manipulated into it, or you just thought, oh, okay, this is the answer. They're giving us the solution to what we're all afraid of. So that was a big turning point of like a great awakening, which sometimes requires a trauma event or a trigger event, to begin to see how much these pillars of society have to be cleansed, have to be like purified. And in doing that, it's a part of our DNA as well, because the outer expression that we can experience won't be a simulation anymore where we're giving our power away or we're answering to an outer authority. It'll be about being in our full, consciousness and sovereignty, and seeing the world reflect back to us the kind of gifts and abilities that were in, Lemuria and Atlantis and, Avalon before Atlantis went dark. But after that final cataclysm, that's when it really just went underground as this power, um, structure that would begin to grow and become what it is today. This covert, deep state that it's become, and it constantly is tricking us out of ourselves. So, our DNA holds, the memory, the galactic memories, but we are born with amnesia. We're born not in schools that encourage our remembrance. If you get depressed or angry because you don't like what you see, you're given pharmaceuticals. You're not allowing that to be the gateway of your exploration of your soul and your soul memory and your soul codes and, your higher galactic, awareness and remembrance. It's all medicated. Like, you got to just sit and like take it all in and become this. And we're owned. That's the enslavement. But people are happy in their enslavement because they're rewarded. Oh, if you do a good job at that, you get the fancy cars and you get the big house and you get the money, and then your self-worth, which we own, gives you a sense of competence, which is very much false light. And if you don't play along, you're a loser, you're an outcast, or you're a rebel, with yeah. So, that's just kind of like the way it's been. And it's all shifting. It's all shifting in every single person who decides they're not going to consent, that doesn't fear the loss of a paycheck, that doesn't fear what other people think, and doesn't, that isn't afraid of that dark night of the soul, or the trust in something much greater. that will guide you down a completely different path that is made of synchronicities, that is filled with, magic and flow, like we're experiencing with our soul family when we go on these cruises, when we just share this information. We all had to take that risk of, okay, I'm going to have my life sustain me based in, truth, or the exploration of discovering something much deeper. And a lot of people aren't ready to break that bond. So I look at it like, a dependency bond with an inverted system, sort of like being tied to a narcissist or an abuser in a relationship. You just don't know how to leave. They own your self-worth. They caused you to believe in that you're crazy or you're wrong, and you're just caught in that loop, and you're abused, and the Stockholm syndrome, and there's trauma, unresolved trauma, and the medications just keep silencing it and silencing it. So everybody's going to have a breaking point at some point to get on the right trajectory, to get on the true trajectory. And in that, once you break that, spell and that bond, you can alchemize anything. All the bioweapons, all the dark technology begins to collapse, and you become spiritualized, and and you're no longer digressing into a soulless gray down the line that has to abduct itself, or abduct its former what it used to be, to regain its, you know what I mean?
That's right. Yes, I've heard that about the Greys, where they got so far advanced, but they lost their spirituality. They lost a lot of their consciousness, and then that's why they're one of the most common ET races that are abducting us. Is so they're fascinated with our DNA, they're fascinated with our spirituality, and they're actually trying to, and our emotionality for that matter, and they're trying to get some of that back. I know, think through technology, through tweaking of the DNA. And isn't that just fascinating with our DNA? I know, I read a study a couple of years ago that Microsoft did, and they showed that DNA is a storage medium, and you can store an incredible amount. I mean, almost an infinite amount of information on just one DNA strand. They said something like they uploaded something like 100 trillion ebooks to this one little, it was gigabytes and terabytes of beyond in terms of space, and they uploaded that huge amount of data to like this one tiny little strand of DNA. It was like in a droplet or something. So they kind of extrapolated from there and said that the human body, the DNA in the human body likely has enough data storage to house all the information of the universe inside of us, right? And so isn't it so interesting, as above so below, with DNA literally being the storage medium that we might be even using not so far down the road for quantum computing and all this other stuff. This is what's inside of our bodies already. I mean, the funniest thing I always see with all the new technology, which can be great, is we're still sitting inside, I think, the most advanced technology, right? The human body.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, I'm doing a webinar end of June with Portal to Ascension about that, and that's what it's called. We are the most advanced technology. And
Mm.
what's so incredible about these times, because it's all about the self-discovery, and we manifest events, and we create events in our lives to shake loose these control systems from our consciousness and from our mind and from our body. But we mistake it, because we've been conditioned to do this. We mistake it for like a misfortune, or you know um like a loss or something terrible. We don't realize it's an upgrade, and it's an opportunity to really get to know yourself more. The system wants you to have them define it for you, and that's why you give your power away to the doctor, and you carry a label, and now you're in their hands. But we don't understand that all these symptoms and all these things that are showing up in our bodies are opportunities to get closer to ourselves, because it's something that is ready to be released. It's something that is no longer working in your body, in your frequency, because it's very much, when we talk about DNA, it's the epigenetics, because Neptune, Pisces is opposite Virgo, Mercury, Earth. How does the mind talk to the body? If the programming is talking to the body is going to revolt eventually and create dis-ease. And if there's toxic overload that can't be alchemized, it's because there's been no release. There's no flow. The energy currents are not flowing. The electric and magnetic energies are not flowing in the way that they could, because of distortion. And in that distortion, the belief systems that keep that distortion alive are where the false flags and all the social engineering comes in. And the mind keeps telling the body something that isn't true, and it gets sick. So then we give it away even more like solve this for me. And we forget that this is actually an opportunity to unlock that part of you that needs to be released, or understand that distortion that your body doesn't like, so that you can connect with the truth, so your mind is communicating with your higher self, which means that you'll unlock all that dormant DNA and your body will begin to thrive, and you won't fear the symptoms, you won't fear the pain. You'll feel like, wow, I'm getting to know myself and loving myself, and finding those shadow areas that need that unconditional love, instead of like, I'm freaking out, please give me the drug, give me the medicine, give me the label, and tell me how long I have, or give me false hope about some cure. We need to get more in touch and back in touch with our incredible capacity to heal and regenerate, and get a better dialogue going in the system.
This is a question I ask all of my guests here because it's a story we're still piecing together and everyone's got a slightly different perspective. What is your perspective on our, we could get into the galactic origins, but honestly, just the straight up history of humans on this planet. What have you to this date now kind of gathered as our I don't know, our human story, for lack of a better term? Oh, and you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes so far back.
I know.
When we look at like the 12 strand DNA, and we look at, okay, what's happening in the 10th, 11th, and 12th, that's the avatar consciousness, the higher, dimensions of Lyra, the cradle of Lyra, where it all began. But I mean, this is like a free will universe, though. And so the Aeon Sophia, from the pleroma, from the cosmic trinity, was pulled into this experience. And there's a lot of different interpretations of how and why. Some are distorted, some are close, and some are probably truth. It really depends, on how we want to relate to it in our own soul journey, because it's a part of who we are. We're a part of the creator's journey, because the source mother energy became a part of physicality. And of course, in its emanations of the guardian founder races that seeded, life, and all the different, galactic groups, and how they emerge from source. Yeah, I mean, as offspring, but the actual mother energy, got pulled in and became the physical planet. This is after Tiamat exploded, or was a part of all of that, or how the, Earth actually changed. And this became like a Sophionic, planet that we call like Gaia, or Sophia. I mean, but there's different levels of it, So Tara was a system where, advanced humans once resided. And there were, beings that were more service to self after the Lyran Wars and the Orion Wars, and, these kind of battles that had been taking place, that were manipulating incarnate consciousness and beginning to steer people further and further away from, true source energy. And the the core of Tara and the Tiamat planet being struck by Nibiru or Marduk, Tiamat being struck, but like the whole Tara system falling, really created this trauma imprint on a galactic level that a lot of humans feel, but can't really put their finger on, unless you really dig deep and explore.
And
And
just
what it did
quickly
is,
for our audience, Laura, sorry, quickly here. The Tiamat was in our solar system, right? From my memory, on this Tiamat was maybe what our asteroid belt today is, or what's your perspective on that quickly?
there's the 5D asteroid belt of Tiamat, when 5D Tara asteroid belt, and then there's the 3D Maldek explosion that happened as asteroid belt. So it's kind of like there's two different levels of this, because when Tiamat exploded, part of uh, that body became the Earth, and the other Maldek, which became the male counterpart to Mother Earth. When that exploded, that's the more visible asteroid belt. Behind that is like, the Tiamat. So when you
Okay.
look at the genetic code, we're beginning to break down from the 12 strand into, 5D Earth, into like collapsing down into Eartha. And when we collapse down into this lower harmonic universe, that's when, the Earth was what we are in today, where root races, 7 root races, and 5 cloister races started to inhabit. You have your, Polaris, Hyperborea, Atlantis, or Lemuria, Atlantis, and on and on. And these root races, coming in to begin to repair the 12 tree grid slowly but surely through evolution, that we would, come in and heal the fragmentation that took place when Tiamat exploded. When Maldek exploded, it created a whole nother set of challenges, and Anunnaki coming in to create a slave race, and the organic kind of evolution, got tampered with. So perhaps Enki gave us some gifts, but Enlil, wanted to exterminate, and they were supposed to be the guardians of this planet, but it didn't go so well. And it got hijacked and turned into sort of this Illuminati kind of power structure, hierarchical structure that we see today. And we just began to not remember. But we're talking about like lots of seedings before coming down here, and then other seedings. There were the electrical wars, the Nephilim wars, new seedings that happened. Then you got Genesis, and you got the Anunnaki. And it's just like, it's a lot. It's a lot. When you try and get the chronology, right? So my book attempts to do some of that. Hopefully, to trigger people and, researching themselves, and like, what are you finding out? We all got to put it out on the table, right? But basically what this Earth is about is it's like a rehabilitation planet, and it's an ascension.
Okay.
So we're recovering from a lot of galactic wars. We're recovering from service to self beings that have formed alliances with hybrids and controller groups, Black Suns and the Sons of Belial, that are operating behind the scenes. But particularly in 1929, when we achieved warp one, when Tesla sold his technology to the Nazis, all of a sudden, they wanted to begin to do business with us, and create alliances that were beyond, just non-intervention, or we had to reach that capacity first. Before that, we were kind of being observed. It's not like these galactic wars like really ended, but people are having experiences and their memories are being stirred. But after the Atlantean cataclysms and the Lemurian Holocaust, subterranean civilizations, a lot of these beings went underground or they left, right? And here's the human population left with, human hybrids that still have, connection and agreements, that have been in these multi-generational trauma-based mind control, just lineages, bloodlines, that kind of keep this Luciferian covenant alive of, we're going to just keep humans dumbed down and enslaved. So when a human starts to, kind of wake up, or when these abilities start to come online, they've used all sorts of tactics to, target, to do military abductions, to kind of track all of it so that they can, stay in power. So maybe the typical human that you see kind of walking around, that just goes to school, gets a job, gets a career, wants to get a nice house, and this and that. They might be younger souls and just not feeling very stirred in their wanting to awaken. They have a lot of trust in the system. It's a little bit too much for them to dive deeper, but it doesn't mean that those that came to awaken are any better. They're just more switched on. So you get your star seeds coming in, the cloister races, the genetic memory of our galactic, history, or, those that might have not incarnated a lot and were held in stasis or went off because it was too dark and dense, with all these dark cycles of history playing out and all these world wars, that are like, oh, we can come in now because 26,000 year cycle, the geophysics of the planet and the Andromeda and Milky Way core coming together in oneness allows for this opportunity to help humans break free, and helps anchor the mother energy back on the planet, because the reversal grid technology that was put in place 26,000 years ago, particularly, was when the human began to have amnesia. And so, yeah, I know this is a lot, everybody.
There's so much, and for our audience watching, listening, if you're like, wait, whoa, what, like, that's the normal reaction to have. There is a lot going on here, folks. There's so much happening in our history, in our current world. It is, and as Laura has pointed out multiple times, we can't just look at things, one, in a linear perspective, but also two, in a one-dimensional perspective. It's just not how it works anymore. So we were talking about planetary explosions and some pretty intense, let's call it galactic history for our specific solar system here, that absolutely has had a huge ripple effect for thousands of years. And it's a really interesting way to look at our planet. It's kind of like a rehab planet for these souls and these beings and stuff. It kind of makes sense. And what people are what I'm wanting to remind people right now in this is this is a multidimensional reality, and therefore a multidimensional history. So, you're talking about things that are affected in the third dimensional reality, but then there's like fifth dimensional reality things. There's all these dimensions of reality being affected, and that's also what we're seeing today with ET and disclosure. All the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So, I think one of the main things that I love about your research and what you offer is just this unbelievable in depth insight in how controlled we are. And I think that's something that also really needs to come out more with our history. Is you can't look at the human history without looking at human oppression. And I'm not talking about humans oppressing humans. Of course, that's there too, but we're talking other beings oppressing humans, and it gets very complicated. So with this colorful history, let's call it, for the human race, where do we bring that knowledge into today? And how can we take this forward into, let's call it, the new earth, this beautiful new frequency that we're moving into?
Mm. Yeah, well, just, to understand that our vulnerability and our amnesia has been taken advantage of. Unresolved traumas have been, taken advantage of, because when you don't dig deep and you understand the root of it, then you're not really going to heal. And if it keeps getting covered up and covered up with false history, or it not being even presented to explore unless you go out of your way to find it, which we had the freedom to do, it can be very difficult. So as humans, we have to just encourage our children, and in doing that, it's great if you can homeschool and pull them out of the system as best as you can. But the system has to be changed from the inside out, right? So, if you're going to be in it, have a voice. When you see something that's off, when you don't agree with something, don't just sit and take it. Be an advocate, be a voice, be a leader. Uh, you know, Everybody's at a different stage, and that's okay. You don't have to force what you know onto others. You can just be a resource. The most important thing is that we maintain love, because the divide and conquer is one of the worst programmings. I'm right, you're wrong, or just all these ways to pit us against each other. And people who are awakened that now we'll look at the rest as sheeple. It's like, okay, well, we're all at different phases and different levels. We have to really help one another. This is a rehabilitation, but we have to be participants. Nobody's going to do it for us. And it's not that things aren't, greater forces aren't intervening, but it's like our higher self intervening when we hear it warn us about something, or give us a download. Are we going to listen? Are we going to integrate it? Are we going to take it seriously? Or are we just going to ignore it or blow it off? Same with our intuition. So we have everything that we need to guide us, but we don't want to silence it. And same with these, forces that are assisting, the guardians, white hats, positive military units. Eisenhower, there's a lot of history there with what he helped set up, covertly, when these alliances had been formed long before he became president. But he's been the scapegoat, and a lot of blame was put on him. And I've discovered that those are all false narratives as well. So, and I'm just saying that as reassurance that there are all these, positive forces, right? But you are the most important participant, and they need us. We need to recognize our role. When we dismantle the dark weaponry from within, when we win the war on consciousness from within, when we rise up to the best of ourselves as, spiritual beings that have integrity and compassion, and we're heart-centered and soul-centered, then the worst part is over. And then we, can be a beacon for others. We can lead by example, and we can, help in the rehabilitation process. And that's what people do when they have healing centers, or they open their hearts up to, assist people that might be lost and confused. You can't do it for them. You don't have the answers that they don't, but you can at least hold space for them discovering it themselves, to begin to recognize that their unique calling, their unique expression is a part of it. It's not about following one person. It's not about believing in something outside of yourself, or and that's, I think, what people are constantly looking for, because they're so afraid of doing the inner work. They've been taught to fear the shadow, fear the dark night of the soul, medicate it, anything but that. How can we be more supportive to one another, to move through these initiations, to allow our society to give us more time to sleep and rest, not this 9 to 5, not this work, 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 work. Can you take more time off? Can we have more recess outside? Can we play in nature more? We got to be the guardians of our children and of ourselves, and demand better, know that we deserve better, and that we don't have to just answer to something. But this needs to be something, starting from the ground level. When you go to school, these are options and opportunities that we present to our kids, to see that bigger picture, to see what we're dismantling, to be the conscious and awakened rehabilitators, starseed missions, advanced souls, earth warriors, not just so it's up to us. It's up to us. And then, while these other positive forces are operating as well, we meet them as equals. We meet them as a unified field of togetherness in this. If we wait for them to save us, we're going to miss out, because we're not playing our role. It can nudge us, it can remind us, but ultimately, if we don't stand up uh, and take accountability for our part, we just still are vulnerable to the tricksters and the false light beings that act like our saviors and act like our gurus and act like the ones that are gonna help us. But if we don't learn to help ourselves, then we're going to be in the same trap of people that have survived cults, people that have survived narcissistic abusive relationships, that thought the guy or the girl was great until so it's don't be afraid of the inner work, and just know that, like, Portal to Ascension and people, these kind of communities, and just my mission and purpose and passion is to just be that person that gets it, how difficult this is, and has walked through a lot of underworld fires and tragedies, and the toughness of this human experience, and just our friends. And it's like, you're not alone, so let's do it, and let's have fun, and let's celebrate, because we're coming home. There's nothing to fear.
Mm, beautiful. So well said. And I'm fully on board for that, Laura. It's so true. I'm a big believer in the inner work and the shadow work, and the greatest downloads and upgrades in my life have all come through working with the shadow, and doing my own big dark nights of the soul. And that's something that we should not only not fear, but should revere. And it's a part of our healing process. It's the yin and the yang. We need both sides, the light and the dark, right? We need that. That's an important thing. So thank you so much, Laura. Before we get you off the show here, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? We'll have, of course, your website and stuff in the description below, but just so you can let our audience know, it'd be great.
Yeah, so cosmicgaia.org is my website. I'm going to update it because I have a bunch of events coming up, like New Living Expo in San Rafael, California, May 9th to 11th. And then I'm going to Isle of Wight with David Icke, which is going to be awesome. So, and yeah, there's more. And I will update my site. You can find where to book a session with me on my website under book. I do astrology readings, and I use that as a tool to, just help you find your just greatest potential, your soul purpose, see the patternings that are limiting you, and how to, turn these patternings that might keep you in a negative loop into something that can be a catalyst for your growth. And yeah, everything's pretty much there. And my social media, I'm rebuilding all my channels after having them yanked and censored.
Means you're on the right path.
Subscribe, and yeah. And I look forward to interviewing you sometime, and all the amazing work you do. So thanks for having me on, and all your explorations and the beautiful music you do. And it's been really fun to chat with you. I know it's a lot, and I hope I articulated okay. It's really hard to squeeze it into, but yeah, my book is Awakening the Truth Frequency, and you can kind of sit with it and take your time with it. A lot that we talked about is all in there. So you can get that on Amazon and cccpublishing.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Laura. And again, everyone watching, listening, check out Laura's work, check out her books. Like, we just glossed over a lot today. So there's a lot to dive into. Make sure you check her out or see her live. She's got a very amazing, passionate energy. So you want to catch that live if you can. And for everyone else that tuned in and has watched this episode, thank you so much for watching or listening. And we will catch you on the next episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Until next time.
Bye.